Good morning. This past Sunday we had dessert with Bob. It's an opportunity for us to be able to visit with people who are guests at our church, to be able to invite them to become a part of the family of faith. This one was different than any before. We had to do everything online. So no one was there, but actually we had more people participate, watching and sharing online than any dessert with Bob ever before. I've always believed it's very important that we should be inviting people to be a part of a family of faith. I graduated seminary 41 years ago, back in June of 1979. And when I graduated, I was appointed by the bishop to go out and start a new church in the southwest part of Houston. The bishop called me in and said, "Bob, I got an opportunity for you. We don't have a building for you to meet in. In fact, we don't even have any land where you could build a building, but we'll find some. We don't have a core group waiting for you, but there is a lot of potential out there. So you need to go find it. Find people who want to be a part of the church, and good luck. God bless you. Come back and let us know when you have a church." That was my appointment out of seminary. And let me tell you, that was very little daunting. I learned about opportunities that the bishop might give you. We didn't have hardly any money, seed money, and that meant I was going to have to go out and ring doorbells, invite people to come to church. There really was no other way. And so that's the decision I made, that I would get up in the morning. By 9 o'clock, I would go into a neighborhood, and I would start walking up and down the streets, knocking on the doors. "Hello, my name is Bob Long. I'm starting a new Methodist church in your neighborhood. If you're not an active part of a local church, I'd like to invite you to come." I wasn't there to try to be taking members away from a church. I first and foremost wanted to encourage everybody to find a church. If someone said, "I'm Catholic or Baptist or Presbyterian," I talked about those churches. But if they didn't have a church home, or if they were new in the community, I invited them to come to church. I did it 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. But I have to tell you, that was slow going. I kept trying to build a mailing list of people who said they might be interested. And I said, when I finally have a place, I'll be sure and get in touch and let you know. But it was discouraging, I have to admit, because it was hard. And so many people already back in 1979 had 2 working people in a home. So I found so many homes where no one was there. There was one day I was out and I was ringing doorbells and I wasn't finding anybody. And this had been now the second or third day in a row, and I felt the list was small and slow growing, and I just got to tell you, I felt so alone out there, and I became very discouraged. And one of those days, I'll never forget, where I was parked in Mission Bend subdivision, and I decided I was going to quit and go home. I was just tired of doing this. And I went over to my car, and I put my key in the door to unlock it, and it's like I heard a voice in my own heart saying, "If you quit now, it's going to be hard to come back." I really felt like it was God speaking to me. And I stood there with my hand on the key for a while, wrestling with myself. What do I do? I was so close to going home. I finally pulled the key out of the door, and I walked up to another door as quick as I could. And I knocked on the door, and a lady answered the door. Her name was Miriam Champagne. I'll never forget it. I said, "Hello, my name is Bob Long. I'm starting a new Methodist church in your neighborhood. If you're not an active part of a local church, I'd like to invite you to come." She said, "We're Methodist." And she invited me in. You can tell how long ago that was. She invited me in. We sat down, had a cup of coffee, and I told her about the ideas of a church, and she was so kind. And finally, I got ready to leave, and she said, "Have you visited with Don and Jane?" I said, "No. They're right across the street. I'll call and tell them." I walked across the street and knocked on the door, and I got to visit with Don and Jane. Wonderful people. Don would become the first chairperson of our administrative board. I got ready to leave, and he said, "Have you visited with Rick and Gail?" "No, they're right across the street. We'll call them." I walked across the street and sat down with Rick and Gail. Wonderful people. They and their whole family came and joined in. I got ready to leave, and they said, "Have you visited with Brenda and Bucky?" "No. They're right down the street, 3 houses, right-hand side. We'll call them." I walked down and I met Brendan Bucky, and he became the first chair of our finance committee. Wonderful people. I got ready to leave, and he said, have you visited with the Goodales, Jim and Judy? John and Judy? I said, no. He said, well, they're right across the street. They didn't call, but I walked right across the street and I knocked on the door. And I stood there and stood there. They had one of those kind of glass reflective front doors. Finally, the door opened and there was Judy. I told her what I was there. I'm a Methodist minister, starting a Methodist church. She invited me in. We sat and talked. She and her family hadn't been going to church. But she said, we need to get to doing that. She would later tell me, Bob, the day that you came to visit and I let you in? Yes. Do you know why? I said, no. She said, I thought you were a vacuum cleaner salesman and I needed a vacuum cleaner. They turned out to be wonderful people, great leaders in the church where they are in Houston to this day. I said, do you know the Moores? No, right around the corner. I went up there and then I got to visit with the Moores. And I tell you, that day, after I almost went home, I met 6 different couples, one after the other, the most wonderful people who all came and truly created the foundation of this new Methodist church. And I always remembered I was this close to going home, this close to quitting. Sometimes life gets hard. Sometimes you feel alone. Things seem to stack up. It's really easy to become afraid, especially in times like this. It's easy to become overwhelmed and feeling afraid. Rather than quitting, you and I need to be listening for God to speak. For I am convinced God will speak. In those moments when we feel alone and we want to give up, God comes. Remember, the word faith means we trust in God's constant love of us, his children. If you trust in his love, you don't quit, you listen. And I am sure God will speak to open the doors, to give us guidance, to give us the strength we need. For all the doors that were closed, they all began to open after I almost quit. I hope you go out today. Be safe, but make it a great day. And don't quit.